this video discussion, we will travel back in time to rediscover one of the integral part of our Philippine history, and we will also talk about the important events and explain its importance in understanding of the history in the Philippine setting. Antonio Pigafetta studied astronomy, geography, cartography, and served on board the ships of the Knights of Rhodes at the beginning of 16th century. His travelogue is one of the most important primary sources in the study of pre-colonial in the Philippines. His account was also a major referent to the events leading to Magellan's arrival in the Philippines, his encounter with local leaders, his death in the hands of Lapu-Lapu's forces in the Battle of Mactan, and in the departure of what was left on Magellan's fleet from the island. And lastly, the book about Ferdinand Magellan was written by him on board in one of the 5 ships that was first to circumnavigate around the world. During our elementary days, we heard a lot of stories about Magellan as he is one of the first Europeans who visited the Philippines. But the question is, what are the bases about this claim or the history about Ferdinand Magellan's expedition? One of it is the book which is written by Antonio Pigafetta. At the end of the voyage, Antonio Pigafetta, the author of the book, was on board to Victoria, and this was the only ship that was able to return to Spain. Upon arrival in Europe, Pigafetta presented copies of his accounts to several high personages, including Pope Clemente VII, mother of King Francis of France, and etc. His original diary was lost, and it is not known in what language it was written. But luckily, there are 4 manuscript versions that survive, 1 in Italian and 3 in French. Analysis of the important historical information found in the document. Since Magellan and his crew crossed the international dateline, there's 1 day added to the original dates that Antonio Pigafetta wrote in his book for the better perspective of the Filipinos. Throughout the expedition, there served a translator named Enrique, and Enrique is from Sumatra, present-day Indonesia, and he is a slave of Ferdinand Magellan. On March 17, 1521, Pigafetta reported that they reached Zamal, now Samar, but Magellan decided to land in another inhabited island for greater security where they could rest for a few days. After 2 days, March 18, 9 men came to them and showed joy and eagerness in seeing them and welcomed them with food, drinks, and gifts. On April 1, 1521, Magellan ordered the captain to preside a mass by the shore. The king sent 2 dead pigs and attended the mass with 2 other kings. Pigafetta explained that Magellan ordered that the cross he brought with nails should be planted in the beneficial for the people, because once the Spaniards saw this cross, they would know that they had been in this land and would not cause them troubles. On April 8, 1521, Magellan's interpreter explained to Raja Humabon that Magellan's king was the emperor of the great empire, and that it would be better to make friends to them. Raja Humabon consulted his council, and they met in an open space, and the king offered a bit of his blood and also demanded Magellan to do the same. On April 15, 1521, Pigafetta showed the queen Hara Amihan an image of a very beautiful wooden child Jesus and a cross, and asked for the little child Jesus to keep in the place of her idols, and this image of child Jesus is now known as the Santo Niño found in Cebu. After 8 days, all of the island's inhabitants were all baptized. Pigafetta admitted that they burned a village down for obeying neither the king nor Magellan, and the mass was conducted by the shore every day. On April 27, 1521, Magellan died in the battle, and Pigafetta described how Magellan died. The native, perceiving that the bodies of the enemies were protected with armors, so aimed for their legs instead. He was then pierced with a poisoned arrow in his right leg. Magellan was specifically targeted because the native knew that he was the captain general. The king of Cebu have sent help to Magellan but Magellan instructed him not to join the battle and just stay in Balangay so that he would see how they fought. The natives have slain all the men except the interpreter and one Serrano who was already wounded. The fleet departed and abandoned Serrano. They left Cebu and continued their journey around the world. Analysis of Pigafetta's Chronicle. The best storyteller is the one who not only knows the story but saw it. It is considered as the earliest detailed documentation. It was believed that Pigafetta's writing account for the purest pre-colonial society. Pigafetta's work is of great importance in the study and writing of Philippine history, and it is also one of the most cited documents by historians who wish to study the pre-colonial Philippines. Lastly, Pigafetta was seen as a credible source for a period which was prior and chronicled and undocumented. The effects of this primary source to the history of the Filipino people. First, this book served as an evidence that the world is round and not flat. Next, this book aids the researchers and students of today in understanding the context of Magellan's expedition and how the hole in Europe and Philippines conflict commenced. Next, growing up, we have understood this issue just simply as the start of the Spanish era and Magellan being the Philippines' villain without taking into debate the context and different reasons of the expedition. Next, it opened many doors for the Philippines. Next, helps us in knowing how the early Filipinos lived by the account of the primary source who witnessed it firsthand, and will help us understand how the Filipinos of the past lived and how they coped when Magellan and his men came to the Philippines. And we discover what religion Filipinos used to have, and they became Christians. And we also find out how the first Filipino fought and delayed the Spanish occupation by years. And lastly, Pigafetta's journal is also a vital piece not only in the Philippine history but also of the world history. He narrated the events that transpired in a way that gives the readers of his journal a clear picture of what it was like to be part of the first voyage around the world.